Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the flash flood response meeting here in Lower Makefield Township on August 23rd. I'm Jim Majewski. I'm the Community Development Director. To my left is Derek Fuller, our Public Works Director. To my right is Paul DiFiore, who is one of our Township Engineers with Remington Vernick Engineers. And online, we have our Township Manager, Dave Kratzer. We'll start off with an update on the restoration work at 18 and 20 Maplevale Drive.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. As for 18 and 20 Maplevale Drive, since our last somewhat update on last Wednesday at the Board of Supervisors meeting, the contractor did get back and got started. I believe it was on Friday/Monday. They hit it harder. So the contractor is back on site at 1820 Maplevale Drive. We did also meet again internally with our geotechnical engineer just to make sure we're moving forward in the proper directions. So they did get back to work. We have the head wall working to get set, the new head wall for the outlet for the 30-inch pipe. So that was set, and actually this is why we do construction inspection. We did notice there was a slight elevation difference of where we actually set it. So they did correct that, or working to correct that. So again, this is why we inspect this work. So the head wall is getting set, and the next steps are to begin setting the pipe and the embankment reconstruction with armoring. So that's kind of where we sit with 18 and 20 Maplevale Drive updates, Jim. That is correct. That is correct, sir. Yes.
Mr. Adams, if you want to speak, you need to come up to the microphone. Yes. It should come out. Yes.
Curious about what you call the head wall. That would be the location where the pipe discharges out to go into the canal.
That is correct. That's the discharge side of the pipe. That is correct, sir.
And how far away is that wall from the actual water of the canal?
Give or take, it's within the embankment slope of the canal. I don't know the exact dimensions at this time, but it's within the embankment slope of the canal.
Was that roughly 10 feet or?
Less than 10 feet.
Oh, less.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you. All right, now the pipe that you're installing there, is it being replaced all the way to the catch basin at the curb line?
Yes, it is.
So all the old concrete pipe is being replaced.
That is correct.
And the diameter of the old concrete pipe was?
I believe 30-inch RCP off the top of my head. I believe this 30-inch reinforced concrete pipe was the original pipe from 1980s, and the new pipe is a 30-inch smooth interior, high-density polyethylene plastic pipe.
That's correct.
How is it jointed? What holds the ends of the new pipe together?
Gasketed friction, I would assume, is HDPE, correct?
Yeah, standard practice, HDPE should be on our detail. We can verify that. Yeah, I'm sorry, HDPE is high density polyethylene pipe. So sorry, short for HDPE is the acronym.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have, is there anyone else who wants to speak on this, or we can move on? Next, we'd like to give an update on state agency communication and permitting. First up, does anyone have something to report on PennDOT?
David, correct? I believe you have all these updates, David.
Yeah, I'd be happy to address those. And again, I apologize that I'm not physically in attendance, dealing with a medical issue, and so was unable to be there. But just sort of running through our communications and sort of ongoing collaboration with the various agencies involved from the Commonwealth perspective. The first item in terms of Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, As was mentioned at the Board of Supervisors meeting last week, we did correspond with PennDOT as those that are in attendance and those that are listening are likely aware. Taylorsville Road is a state road under the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and PennDOT, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, is the agency responsible for that roadway. We made a request of the department to look at a capital construction project on Taylorsville Road, looking at the opportunity for installing additional stormwater infrastructure on that state road. Additionally, we made a similar request for Dolington Road, which is also a state highway. We did receive a response back from PennDOT that they currently do not have any planned improvements or programmed improvements on Taylorsville Road or Dolington Road as it relates to drainage. They indicated that essentially that they don't have any statutory obligation to retrofit the roadway to meet current standards as it relates to stormwater. They directed us to what's called the Long Range Transportation Plan / Transportation Improvement Plan that is administered on the county level through the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is the transportation planning organization for the county, and directed us to make a request through solicitation that would be made as part of that planning process. So we intend to do that, and I'll mention that we do have a meeting scheduled with Bucks County for September the 5th, which is item 3 on the agenda, to discuss that process and hopefully look at getting the department to program some investment in Taylorsville Road and or Dolington Road as it relates to drainage along those two state highways. Additionally, we've been corresponding with them regarding what I would characterize as maintenance items. One of the items that Derek had previously reported on was the department had indicated a willingness to install essentially backflow preventers or flaps within the existing inlets on Taylorsville Road. Derek reached out to the local maintenance unit to request a schedule for that work. They've indicated that they do not have that work scheduled, and it's unlikely that that work would be scheduled prior to the end of the year. When we received that response, we in turn asked PennDOT to prioritize this work because we believe it's important work to be done. And at this point, the response that we got was that they're going to proceed with their currently planned work, and that once that planned work is completed, then they would transition to any unplanned work. And so that's where we're at with PennDOT. With the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and I'll lump this in with Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. We are having ongoing conversations with both state agencies regarding the what we're calling a redundant pipe or an additional pipe to be installed along Maple Vale Drive to discharge into the canal where the current discharge point was at. We continue to advocate for that. At this point, they've not granted approval to be able to do that. And so, as was again committed to at the last Board of Supervisors meeting, we are drafting letters to both agencies requesting the reconsideration of the ability to add an additional redundant pipe at that location discharging into the canal. So those letters are currently being finalized. I would expect that they would be sent to, again, both the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and then the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection by the end of this week. And then getting into just PEMA and FEMA, the agenda notes that there was no update on that. There is no substantive update on that other than we did receive word that PEMA is still reviewing information and determining how to proceed with with the request for support. And they also noted that they've been granted a 30-day extension by FEMA of, I guess, what's the normal sort of timeline that they have to operate under in order to make a determination. So I can pause there, Jim, and if anyone has any questions on any of those items between the four of us, I'm sure we can address those.
And just if you could identify yourself and, you know, where you live roughly.
Absolutely. My name is April Boyes-Clover, and I live at 20 Maple Vale Drive. Just in response to the letter writing. So we also have a letter, at least a base letter and some content drafted to share with our neighborhood and in our local community as well. And I have contact information that you all shared with us in addition to contact information we had. So just for the group, I will share that hopefully tonight-ish maybe, but I just want to get one more set of eyes on it before it went out. In terms of, I understand where PEMA and FEMA stand. In terms of assistance for the families in the neighborhood, is it appropriate at any point to share other resources through the community? For example, St. Ignatius Church has collected specifically for the flooding incident, and they're still looking for other people to provide assistance to. Is there, I don't know if this is a church and state thing, if you all can share that, if there's some way we can get that information out to people outside of our direct neighborhood, we'd appreciate some help with that if possible.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that, April. That there's no issue in terms of separation there.
Okay.
So as you know, one of the resources that's available, just like we'll highlight the sort of United Way later on in the agenda. Happy to share information regarding the efforts that the church is undertaking and other community organizations are undertaking. And so if that's as simple as just you know, posting that information and or distributing it directly through the listserv that we sort of maintain of those that were impacted by the storm, we're happy to share that information. So if you or someone within the neighborhood is able to provide that, we're happy to share it in any way that we can.
Awesome, thank you. I'll send you an email on that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
That's all for me.
Richard Adams, 221 Taylorsville Road. I have a question on the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation request that this township sent to them. I would like, through the right to know, I would like copies of what this governing body did send to them and any responses in writing that they sent back to you. I will try on Monday afternoon to come here and turn in that paperwork. Very curious about the inlets or catch basins or whatever, that in order for this work to be successful in the future is we must redirect the water that lands on the pavement between the curbs, not into the creek. If it requires that you go across the last house on Taylorsville Road, I believe it's 240, go across their driveway with a pipe and then go down into your property, forgetting the number of acres, but it's quite a few, and the water discharges there to seep off into the ground, which is primarily sand and gravel. I'm hoping that you are not thinking of doing this check valve, which will become fouled with dirt and brush and limbs and whatnot, and will be ineffective. That you are, but first off, as you probably know, well, David, do you see the right to know that I submit? Do you see those and read those?
I see some of them, Mr. Adams. I don't, sometimes they're able to be handled, but I'm generally aware of the right to knows that have been submitted. And then just before you go on, I mean, in terms of partnering with PennDOT as it relates to, you know, a potential project that the township could work jointly with PennDOT on, you know, the township is more than willing, and that was part of the request to the department, was to study these and hopefully come up with a solution to the issue. And so the check valve concept that you referenced in your comments, I just want to make sure you understand that that's what the department has communicated that they're willing to do. That's not us suggesting that's the end all be all solution to the issue. So I just, again, I understand that we're obviously having this conversation at the township level, and we're the parties that are accessible on this issue, but there are other parties that ultimately have jurisdictional control over some of this stuff that, again, we'll continue to advocate and continue to work in partnership with those agencies, but ultimately we need cooperation from those agencies.
Understood. It's my opinion that those 3 catch basins, water inlets that are in the curb were put there by the Toll Bridge Commission. And I would like to find out, did they just go ahead and do it on their own, or did they get permission to do it? I would like some help from this township to determine that they were put there legally, or were they just put there because they had some money to spend? There's no reason for them to be there. They put the curb there. They put those 3 inlets there. Yes, the township themselves put that one that's in the middle of the road, no curb, just down toward Taylorsville Road from Highland Drive Bridge. That one also is at a lower elevation. The water comes up through it first. We need to pipe that off to some other place so that the creek can never put water onto Taylorsville Road. That's, in my mind, that's the biggest priority by far, is to put a stop to the water coming down the creek. And this never happened until Prospect Farms was built. And that calculation obviously was not good. It never happened. Never. Been here since 1949. All right, and now I'd like to move to the bridge, Highland Drive. As the pictures show, during this flooding, more water came down the creek than can get underneath of that bridge. Is this township designing a bridge that's longer in length, possibly a little higher, or the sand and grit and everything that's in the creek a little bit lower, to try our best, everybody's best, to that the water, all the water that comes down that creek can get underneath the bridge and not up and overflow the embankments along Taylorsville Road onto Taylorsville Road. David, do you have an answer for that?
I do not at this point, Mr. Adams. I mean, Derek, I know, again, after the storm, there were some photographs. I know you shared those photographs with Mr. Adams. I'm not suggesting that the what Mr. Adams is suggesting is not prudent to consider and look at, but the water was flowing through that structure. Is that correct? Is that what I recall that?
Yes, but it was also overflowing the embankment onto Taylorsville Road before it got to the bridge.
Correct, Mr. Adams.
The 3 properties before the bridge.
So
Correct,
I guess
Mr.
I'm
Adams.
trying to understand how the diameter or opening of the bridge opening, if water was flowing through it and the overage or the overtopping of that stream was occurring prior to that structure. I'm trying to just understand sort of the relationship between the two.
Well, it could not get under the structure because of the restriction.
And Mr. Adams, and to David's point, that's part of the larger study of trying to reduce the flow coming downstream. So it could be a combination. We need to stop the amount of water that potentially comes downstream. And to David's point, it's a few bullets down, some other updates, but that's why we're working with a consultant to determine the watershed of that area and how to reduce the amount of water coming down that watershed.
I agree with that.
And all that goes into play in terms of bridge replacement. We just can't go in there and replace a bridge with any size because the state requires the H&H and they require how much flows coming into that structure.
It's
So it all,
not the state's bridge, it's Lower Makefield Townships.
I understand that, but a bridge replacement requires permits from the Department of Environmental Protection.
And they do require extensive studies. An H&H study is
Have you started the
hydrology and
studies?
hydraulic study that would need to be done. And we don't want to just do a little isolated study on one point when we need to look at the entire upstream conditions. And that's actually number 5 on our agenda to do the
Makefield
upstream conditions
Chase,
assessment.
Island Drive, and
And we'll be getting into that shortly.
yeah. Because evidently the Highland Drive development was never studied for how much water. It was before there was those requirements. It was way back around 1960.
Right. And that's why we'll be updating on that in just a little bit.
Let's get a contract out to do that development. Let's get started.
Do you have anything else on the updates we gave on the different agencies? Because we will be getting to some of your questions in a little bit.
I want to
Or if we have someone else who,
know,
oh,
I want to fill out the right to know papers for PennDOT, the Department of Environmental Protection of anything that you've submitted to them for permits or whatever. We, the people that live in Mapleville, want copies of whatever you have submitted and the dates that you submitted them, the dates you got replies, and any future paperwork to see what the rulings are by these Harrisburg agencies, and that we can communicate to our senator and congressman in Harrisburg and try to get them to give you all and the development help in getting quality decisions. All we seem to hear is excuses.
is there anyone else would like to speak on the updates?
Michael McPeak, 24 Mapleville. My question is about FEMA. There is no update, and to me, that's unacceptable. They are only getting answers from people in this room last couple of meetings. There's no outreach to the people who have not signed up for it. And I know there's families that have not signed up with their issues. It's really, in my mind, up to the township to be reaching out to the neighbors, door knocking or whatever. I have not got any new information from the township about any of this flooding, except through these meetings. Nobody's come to my house to talk about was my house damaged. Nobody sent me something in the mail asking if it was damaged. If I weren't already involved in this, I would know nothing about FEMA and how to sign up for FEMA. I think you're not targeting a big enough area, because you just said you're going to reach out to the people on this list with information about the charities that want to help. But there's other people that are not on this list that I think it's the township's responsibility to try to find out everybody who's damaged, not the responsibility of people who are damaged to tell the township.
No, and to that point, so after the flood event, we had numerous social media blasts, the postings of notifications that report the stuff to us. So when you report the information to Lower Makefield Township, we send that information up to the county, EMA, Emergency Management Agency, and then the county gets it up to FEMA. We're not the direct agency directly to FEMA. So that's why we keep asking all residents to please notify the township at admin@lmt.org, or please call the main number, because that's how we get your contact information to get it up to the county to then to FEMA. So there's not a direct relationship to the homeowner to FEMA. It goes through us to the county to FEMA.
I get that, but I have personally not seen any of your requests. I'm not on a lot of social media.
Michael, there's been
I work 9 to 5. usually.
There's been at least 2 hand-delivered notices to the residents in the areas impacted. There's been a door hanger, and there was a distribution.
I got a door hanger for the United Way this weekend.
And the first
Well,
item on United
and the-
Way, again, distributed by us, was please inform the township of any damages. That's number one.
I got that this week from United Way.
And-
Well, there was
maybe
the
last
prior
week.
notice that, and again, I don't want to get into an argument on this issue, but Derek, there was also a hand-delivered notice following the storm by the Public Works Department as well. In addition to the social media postings, the website postings, the announcements at every public meeting that has occurred, post-storm events. So there has, in addition to general distribution of information, there has been efforts to make direct distribution of information to folks. So I
have personally not got any of that except the United Way hanger last week. And I'm not big on social media, and I've been to every one of these meetings. So it's not like I'm not aware of it. But I know there are other people who, like me, have not seen your information and are not aware of this. I work with Habitat for Humanity. We door knock to every single house in development. We're helping a couple families. Neither one of them were in the original list of people that needed help. I told them both to sign up. I know one did. I don't know if the other one did.
Michael, I don't know if there's an opportunity for us to partner with Habitat in some fashion, just like the United Way reached out to try to make us aware of the services that are available. Again, if you're going through that exercise of doing a door knocking campaign as a nonprofit, just like the United Way has offered to communicate the importance of reporting damages, I think there's an opportunity for sort of cooperation and collaboration there. So if there's folks that you're interacting with that have not reported damages to the township, again, I understand that it's not, Habitat's, responsibility, but there could be some assistance provided by entities like Habitat and other nonprofit organizations in order to assist folks with their respective recovery. And from every nonprofit we've heard from that has reached out to us, they've not received any requests for support from folks at this point. So again, it's important that folks try to find support that's available.
I'm helping 2 families on Maple Vale. So I don't know what anybody else has done or not. But the one family didn't know about the charities, didn't know about us, didn't know about a lot of other things. She was gone for a week when the flood came. So she missed stuff. The other family, the lady's more senior, and I'm dealing with her son. So what she knows, I'm a little bit out of the loop on. But I just know that we went through one day and knocked on every door, left flyers, left information, and we don't help most people. It's income qualified. And so most working families won't qualify, but seniors generally do, or a lot of seniors do. And we've been trying to help those people. I don't know who's asked for help or who hasn't. I know that McCaffrey Family Fund, I think it's called, is trying to find people to help, and nobody's really asking them because everybody's sort of asking the churches. But there's people don't know how to qualify. And there's people who don't know that if my house has $1,000 worth of damage, I'm not overly worried about it. It should still be on that FEMA list because it's a household, and that's what matters, not the dollar value.
Correct.
Everybody's house is destroyed is on your list and at these meetings. But there are damaged houses that aren't showing up because it wasn't that bad a storm to them, or it wasn't that big a deal. But it's another household for FEMA.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and we've consistently expressed that very message, that regardless of the extent of damage, regardless of the capacity for you to essentially self-manage the recovery process, it's still important that that information be conveyed to us so we can in turn provide it to Bucks County, which can in turn be provided to FEMA.
Hi, how are you? Richard Schwartz, Partridge Road, Kimball's Field. Thank you for the efforts. I appreciate it, and my heart goes out to everybody also affected. In terms of PennDOT and Dollington and Taylorsville Road, if you could help me understand, what did they do to determine that they don't need to do anything in terms of getting the water to flow better? I'm grateful to have thousands of acres of farm fields behind me, but 7.5 inches of rain in 45 minutes came onto my property, turned my pool brown, and went into my house. So there's no swale of note, no culvert on Dollington Road. What made them determine they don't need to do that?
And that's what we asked them to look at, to David's point earlier. We asked them to look at Taylorsville and drainage along those two roads. And to their, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, their initial response was, at this time, it is not on the horizon to do any work on there. To contact, again, David, correct me if I'm wrong, to reach out to the county and get it on a planning initiative for the years, who knows what year it could be.
Yeah.
So in their mind, it's not a critical project.
So they are on record saying for them, it's not a critical project.
David, can you answer to that? I know you had the direct communication.
Yeah, I mean, there's email correspondence and
Okay.
so yes, I mean, I don't know that they use that direct language. It's not a critical project. They just simply articulated that. And again, I think it was a lot of general response that they don't have an obligation, is I think the word that they use, to retrofit highways to meet there was some acknowledgement that standard has changed in terms of stormwater management.
Yeah.
But as Derek has indicated, the conclusion of that email was pointing us in the direction of making a request through the transportation improvement planning process through the county, which is what we intend to do based on the guidance that PennDOT has provided in terms of trying to advance a capital project to address drainage.
Do you have a sense of when the county will get back to you? Because my second part of my question would be, if they're going to drag their heels, is there anything that prevents me from, I back up to Dollington Road. I've got a berm between my property and Dollington Road. I'll dig my own culvert. Is there anything that prevents me from doing that?
I'm adding a culvert on Dollington Road.
On my property.
Oh, your property.
Well, that's something you could actually talk to me about. If you'd like, I can arrange to have a site visit with you.
I appreciate that.
And we can see what can be done or not done, as the case may be.
Yeah, because if they're not going to do it, I am. And then my other question, and I'll yield. What can we do with FEMA? Because if FEMA doesn't declare that a disaster and FEMA doesn't follow, USA is going to rain down on me with increases in my rates that become unaffordable. I can't even put in every claim for all the damage because they would drop me. What can we do?
Just for your information and everyone else in the audience, FEMA flood insurance, they cannot drop you. If you are in a community that participates in the National Flood Insurance Program, as Lower Makefield does, everyone is allowed to get flood insurance through FEMA, and they can't drop you.
Now, USAA, that's FEMA. I will tell you this, that different property, but I had 3 claims in 1 year, and USAA raised my rates to $16,000 a year for homeowners.
Well, I don't think they're allowed to do that by law. I would call up FEMA and find out about that. That's not right.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. I appreciate
someone else have a turn? Oh, okay.
The paperwork that you submitted and what has come back to you pertaining to the storm drains on Taylorsville Road and Dollington Road, I will be filing a request for.
Sounds good, Mr. Adams.
Thank you.
On Tuesday. Is she going to be back on Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
And you could file that anytime you want.
I'm going to switch gears. My name is Lorena Stoddard. I live at 220 Meadow Drive. I'm concerned about the permit to dig on the 14.1 acres between our development and 295. I was just wondering, did the permit go in? Did it get submitted? We discussed it last week and you said you were writing one, but I didn't know if it got done.
No, and just so for everyone, you're referring to I'm going to use the word dredging or gravel bar removal of that parcel. RVE's working on that. So Paul, you have a.
Correct. So for the stream clean out, on the two parcels, Taylorsville Road, east side, Prospect Farm Drive parcel. So we've had some good developments.
Wait, I don't know which side you're talking about. Are you talking about by 295 or are you talking about both? Okay. Okay, so
Both,
which
yeah.
side first?
So in talks with the township, we've found it best to break it up into two phases. The first phase on both parcels is a wooded debris removal. And we've confirmed with Bucks County Conservation District and the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection that permits are not required. The Conservation District has asked for just notification and stabilization. And the Department of Environmental Protection noted that for this first phase, those permits aren't required.
So they're already doing it.
So
Yeah, Derek, do you want to provide, Paul,
Yeah,
if
I
you
don't
could
know
just.
if you saw out there, the crews actually started today. Yeah, so they're going to work nonstop doing basically they have a lot of work just to get access to the stream. So they're starting on the west side of Taylorsville Road, that small piece of land along Taylorsville Road, working towards the bridge. Then we're going to get on the other side of the bridge, a 14-acre parcel, and again, work until we can get all the wooded debris removed and basically see the stream. So that's underway. Yeah, once we heard that word from RVE, got that approval, we started immediately yesterday.
And
Not approval or
You
not
think it-
need for approval, I should say. Sorry.
that's all right. Like you think like 2 weeks?
How much to work? There's a lot to just get access to it. So we're hoping 2 weeks, but it could turn into 3. Yeah, just for the what we initially see in the stream is there's actually not too much actually in the stream from what we can see. The goal is to be able to see the stream. That's what the hard work is, believe it or not. So it's a lot of work just to get to it on that parcel.
So you're actually seeing something dug out. It's not level across.
You can see, yeah, you can see a well-defined stream. Yeah. Not that
Okay,
I want to
and
tell
so-
you this, but if you go along the 295 on ramp, you can actually look down and see it. The part that follows 295 down to the canal, you can almost see it at that point.
So why does it come back out? Why does it come up and come back into our neighborhood?
Once we can visually see it, I will be glad to have more information.
Okay, so approximately 3 weeks, you'll be digging maybe?
Yeah, so my goal is 3 weeks. We get all the wooded debris, get it visible. At the same time, Paul's firm is receiving or getting the permits to be able to remove gravel bars if there are gravel bars. Remember, there is a requirement for DEP that it is, correct, Jim, 6 inches above normal stream elevations, what they define as a gravel bar, I believe, more or less.
I believe that's correct.
So the intent is you cannot dredge a stream deeper. You can, if you have a pile of dirt, again, 2 feet above what's the normal water elevation, you could take that down. If you have dirt that's 6 inches above the normal stream, not a storm, just normal what's out there now, that can't, anything less than 6 inches can't be touched because they consider that natural stream bed.
But to answer your question, we've also begun the second phase, which is this gravel bar removal. So my office is putting together exhibits and plans that will be submitted to DEP to get the permits that are required for the phase 2.
They're not in yet.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Those permit requests are not in yet?
That's correct. We're working on the plans right now. We have the approval to move forward with the wooded debris. So with that going underway, this is what we're currently working on to get the plans to DEP for review.
Yeah, I thought, how many pieces of paper do you have to write? I thought you were doing this 2 weeks ago, that part, the digging part permit.
So we've had multiple permits. So there's been multiple fronts. We've had all these parts moving. The top priority was the emergency permit for Maple Vale, but all these projects are underway and we're making progress.
Well, that was a good answer. Thank you. I don't mean to be disgusted. Sorry. I do appreciate all the work you're doing.
Next on the agenda is an update on Bucks County Planning Commission and Act 167 Planning and Long Range Transportation Plan, Transportation Improvement Plan updates. You want to take this, Dave?
Yeah, I don't have much at this point, beyond what was sort of communicated in conjunction with the discussion regarding, PennDOT on item 3B. So as I said, we do have a meeting scheduled with the executive director of the Bucks County Planning Commission. It's scheduled for September the 5th, in which it's our intent to talk about both the long range transportation plan and the transportation improvement planning processes, and then also discuss Act 167 planning and what work is being done on a county level. So Act 167 plans, just again, not to get too deep in the weeds, are completed on the county level of government. So the subject Act 167 plan for this area, my understanding, has not been updated in multiple decades. And so one of the things that we'd like to discuss, with the county through the County Planning Commission, is work that they're doing just generally on countywide, stormwater planning, and then specifically what's being done within what I think is referred to as the Delaware River South watershed, which is again the area that this area is falling into. And so that Act 167 planning ultimately informs sort of the requirements on the municipal level as it relates to the township stormwater management ordinance and other sort of related matters. And so we're discussing that again on the 5th of September, and then hopefully we'll have sort of more concrete direction and information to be able to share following that meeting on the 5th. So that's all I have there. I don't know if the three of you have anything to add on that, or whether there's any questions regarding that. It's just to note that we are, again, approaching this issue from a variety of different avenues, and the county level is part of the process and part of the levels of government that's involved in these issues. So that's scheduled for the 5th.
Next item on the agenda is update on United Way of Bucks County.
So again, that's just a note, as was mentioned, their door hangers were delivered. That was a joint effort between ourselves, the township, and the United Way of Bucks County. Again, I would, as we've spoke about already, encourage folks to continue to report damages to us, but also to contact the United Way directly to discuss services that they have available that may be helpful for folks as they're recovering from the storm event. And I think Michael's statement is absolutely correct, that regardless of somebody's individual sort of capacity to manage this issue, it is, as we've been saying, important that this information be reported to us, and there are again other nonprofit and community groups that are available to assist folks as they're recovering from the event.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is upstream conditions assessment, which we briefly touched on a few minutes ago, and Mr. Kratzer will give you an update on that.
Yeah, so again, as was reported at the last Board of Supervisors meeting, we've been speaking with a consultant about doing a comprehensive assessment upstream to try to prevent water from coming from that adjacent watershed during significant storm events. I anticipate that we've had a couple meetings with them. They're refining sort of their scope of work. I do anticipate that there will be something for the Board of Supervisors consideration at their meeting scheduled for September 6th. So again, that sort of broader, more sort of comprehensive look. We've advanced sort of that discussion and are hopeful to have the board act upon a proposal at their meeting on September the 5th, or September 6th, rather.
And another item is communications, Zen City.
Jim, I know you were working with Dan on this. I don't know if you have any updates. I just generally wanted to say that we're looking at, how we can better communicate. And one tool that the township recently sort of engaged with is Zen City, which provides sort of a digital engagement platform. And so I know the two of you are in discussions with them about trying to set up some sort of portal or platform similar to what I believe April was requesting at the last Board of Supervisors meeting, where there's an opportunity for sort of back and forth dialogue and posting of updates and those kinds of things within sort of a central location. So I know you and Dan have something scheduled with Zen City, and you guys have started to work on that. I don't know if you have any additional information you wanted to share there.
It'll be a dedicated web page that'll allow everyone to get information in a timely fashion, and also to allow for some dialogue back and forth. And it's a new program that we're just starting to learn, but I think it'll be useful for this, and not just for this singular event, but township-wide for all flooding issues. Your area isn't the only part of the community that is prone to flooding. This last flood event, primarily hit the northern part of the township, while the southern part of the township, people were having barbecues in their backyard as the rain briefly passed through. But they also in the past have had a lot of issues with flooding, and we'd like to really get a better grasp on all of that community-wide. And I think the platform will be useful for us to be able to assess that a little bit better. I'd love that. Okay. Yeah, and if you could just give me your name after the meeting, and people are all volunteering to help sort of test the website as we put it up, so that if they see something that looks goofy, since I'm doing it, it's goofy, and maybe improve on it, it'll be useful to the township. I appreciate that. And now we're on to questions and answers for anyone.
It is on. Richard Adams, 221 Taylorsville Road. I'm wondering whether the right to know form that you have on the internet, would there be some instructions as to how to do that? That I could pick up over here?
Yes, certainly. I could email you, or I could just, when you stop by, I could have a piece of paper ready for you. So that'll help you fill out the form. Although, quite frankly, the forms you filled out so far have all been pretty good. So
He did the one on the internet. I couldn't get a copy as to what I wrote.
okay.
I couldn't figure out the best way to use it. Okay, I hopefully will be back here on Monday afternoon.
Thank you.
Can I just get a quick summary? I'm sorry. So I'm Lorraine Stoddard, 220 Meadow Drive. So we're still working on a permit for the right side of our development, which is between 295 and Maple Vale, right? We're working on a permit for that.
For the stream cleaning phase 2 part, correct, yes.
Yes, okay, and then the piping, we've got all the permits for one single pipe. And we're still pushing for 2. And we don't have a permit for the second one, but you're going back to DEP and DCNR?
That's correct. David, I don't know if you just want to clarify that, but yes, the way we're allowed to proceed right now with DCNR's approval is just the one singular pipe. David's working. Again, this is the kind of letter campaign to DCNR and DEP to allow us to do a second one and reconsider that.
Okay, and then you have written the state for the first time, as far as we know. David did that last meeting. And thank you, David. And we've gotten basically a good public response. You're not in our plans. So we are going back to them. Is that right? I'm sorry. I don't mean to be yelling.
No, David, I don't know if you could touch on that. Did you hear that question? In
Yeah,
regards
yeah,
to
I mean,
Yep.
our intent is, again, we'll pursue the path that they've outlined as the appropriate path. While at the same time, working cooperatively with Senator's office and the representative's office to try to get them to advance and sort of prioritize some of these efforts on those 2 state highways.
So David,
there's
so are you going to call them or email them? Is that how you're going to work with the state, the senator's office and representatives?
We've been having sort of weekly sort of conversations with both offices. So most of it has been sort of verbal at this point. But again, after that meeting on the 5th of September with the county, which again is sort of the entity that we have to go through as it relates to programming those types of improvements, then we should have sort of a better path moving forward.
Okay, so September 5th. And I think it was like September 13th, we'll be ready for doing like digging if we get the permits by then for the 14.1 between 295 and our.
That's the public works goal that's our goal. As long as I know RV's working, as long as we get the piece of paper in our hand, that's our goal. Yes.
Okay, so then the only last thing is that on what would be my left side of the development, which is now into the preserved and protected property that you purchased from somebody. That is done. You've been over there and you've dug things up and redone it. Is that?
Yeah. So that was I want to say a week or 2 after the flood. I don't have the date on top of my head, but yes, we did improvements to the outfall of that pipe to better direct the flow outside of those 2 new inlets that are in the corner of Maple Vale and Taylorsville, the southern entrance. So we did improvements to that outfall, again, where the water drains onto that parcel, to better direct the flow of water. That parcel is relatively flat, so there's not much you can direct to, but we did the best effort, better than it was. We did improve that internally. Yes, that was correct.
Nobody's looked at that in all the 3 or 4 rainstorms we've had since then, has they?
I've been down during again, I don't know the dates, but I try to stop down when I'm here, or even overnight. There was a couple storms that we got called in for power outages that I go down there and drive. I didn't see anything of major concern, but again, it's nothing like the storm we've had, but everything seems to be working
It's
better.
going to be going into that.
Yes. And now that the road got paved on Friday, the final piece of Maple Vale got paved Friday.
Thank you.
So we're waiting for a rain just to make sure it looks like it drains well. So that'll be the ultimate test.
Oh, I wasn't talking about that one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That one the water doesn't go to. The water comes out of Doherty's backyard, and that's where it goes down around. But I was talking about the one behind John and Anne Marie's house. Does anyone know their last name? You know, the big one. Come down Dolington, you make a left towards our development, and it's right there before our development.
On the preserved open space, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the right-hand side. That's the 2 inlets are at the intersection of Maple Vale and Taylorsville, the southern Maple Vale and Taylorsville. That's 2 new inlets that were installed in the fall.
Yeah.
That's where they drain.
Oh,
Yeah,
so nothing's going in there?
231 Meadow. Yeah, those 2 inlets is what drains the Jennings parcel, for lack of better terms. So that's where those
So
two.
it doesn't go, so it doesn't go in right there. It comes from the one that was really placed too high.
Correct. The water goes in those inlets and comes out on the Jennings parcel. If that's, am I saying Jennings?
We
parcel?
can't put an inlet farther in than the state road and just put it
In Taylorsville Road?
off Taylorville's right away. Can't we do it somewhere along there? I'm just thinking, I just can't, that, because the one that you put in doesn't really get the water. It's farther down Maple Vale to that first house right across the street from me. I think it's
In Meadow. So, and I did reach out to RV because that was a question that came up in the last meeting, you know, could inlets be installed at Meadow and Maple Vale? When RVE looked at that again before my time, I don't know how long ago they started this whole process, there's not enough grade there. It's actually a little high spot at that intersection. So, or I'm sorry, a low spot. Again, you're getting lower than Taylorsville Road where the Jennings parcel is higher. So the only spot you had to really unfortunately pick was Maple Vale and Taylorsville to get that to drain. If you go down towards Maple Vale Meadow, you're slightly lower than Taylorsville because again, it's on a slight slope. So now you really have nowhere to drain it to that Jennings parcel because Jennings parcel is almost the same elevation as Meadow and Maple Vale. So you had I did talk to the engineer after the last meeting, and that's kind of why they had to choose that intersection. They couldn't do anything at Meadow and Maple Vale.
Could we catch it lower? This is silly, but so where you put the one that was too high and then you just recessed it, keep continuing down towards where I live. Do you know where
Yeah.
So keep going down Maple Vale,
Mm-hmm.
put another one there, but have the water go back,
Go.
go down to the one that go meet up with that same one. Could we connect it?
And if you notice the inlets, again, you're going downhill. So that would make the water have to go uphill. You know,
No, but could we put the pipe downhill?
No, because we have to hit, again, it's hard to explain, and I'll be glad to show you on paper, but where the discharge is on the Jennings parcel, wherever you put an inlet has to be higher than that. And it has to be higher at a certain slope because you need the pipe to be able to flow water.
Yes, but could you, so the water is not going to the place where you're collecting it. So if you collected it somewhere else and put the pipe down to the one that it doesn't go to, couldn't it?
But again, I can't go down to it, right? The one at Maple Vale's up here,
Yeah.
Meadows down, you know.
And the pipe isn't going this way over to the,
So, and again, this pipe is up here, so it gets to the Jennings parcel. So if you have an inlet down here, if there's nothing to go down to because the pipe's all the way up here. So again, yeah, it's hard to, and I'll be glad to show you, like,
No, I
draw it out and
understand.
sketch it. It's hard.
I understand.
And that's what
just was-
again, we worked with the engineer to understand why they chose that. It's just the grades did not work to go at Meadow and Maple Vale.
Yeah, I was just trying to catch.
Once you get past Maple Vale and Taylorsville, the flow needs to go towards the canal. Again, why in 1950s they put the inlet at 18 Maple Vale.
Okay. I was just trying to think. If
Yeah,
could
no,
catch
no,
it Sooner and get it
Trust me, I
out.
appreciate the ideas because after a while you start banging your head against the wall to make sure you miss something. But yeah, I love the ideas, you know.
We're grateful for all you're doing. We're
No,
just
appreciate it.
freaked out about the next storm. I haven't slept in the last 3 storms. Everybody, I don't think anyone has, honestly, but just.
And you did have a good idea because that was one of the first things that our engineer took a look at and we checked the grades and it didn't work. So they had your exact thought in mind.
I just want, and I think everyone here is aware, I'm Parker Cohen. I'm with State Representative Perry Warren's office. We're very well in contact with the people, both the community here, the supervisor's office. There have been numerous discussions about what's going on. Representative Warren is actually on the Transportation Committee as well as being your state representative. So we're doing what we can. And I also know a bit more about PennDOT and their situation. Is their budget has been frozen for over 10 years. And so this leads to issues where they can't say, oh, we can jump on that right away because we've got this month. They don't. So that's part of what's going on here in the situation. But we do, we are in very good contact about what's going on and want to support the team here.
Richard Adams, 221 Taylorsville. The strip of land to the south of the Mapleville development coming from Taylorsville Road back to the canal where there's a bridge across the canal. Lower Makefield Township took title to that strip of land. How wide is that strip of land that they took title to? Roughly, we don't need an exact.
I'll tell you a pretty good measurement in just a second.
While you're searching there, could the Mapleville people get a plan showing the elevations of the pavement and the curbs or whatever the plan has on it for the whole Mapleville development? That's something that could be provided.
We have elevations from 1980. Nothing's significantly changed, but
Right.
it would have contours at a 2-foot interval and some spot grades. It gives you a general sense of what that is. And for anyone who'd like that, I can provide that to you.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Okay, let's get back to that, whatever it is, width of land that used to be a road all the way back to that bridge. And people used to use it many years ago, but not recently. Any possibility that the level of that land could be lowered? So through Meadow Drive, a culvert could be put in at Mapleville South and Meadow Drive and drain into that strip of land that you folks own.
Absolutely. And that's something that, why we're having the discussions with land studies or a potential, while we're looking at the upstream conditions, is to look at places that we can do basins and do basin modifications. So absolutely, that is something that is on the horizon that is going to be presented, in that proposal is to work with land studies or firm that we present to the Board of Supervisors on September 6th or 5th. And that would be accomplished in their report, if that's something that they find is feasible. Yes.
Okay.
That strip of land, Mr. Adams, is at its narrow part is about 75 feet wide. If you do walk down that area, there's like a trail running from Meadow
Walked it
down to the canal. It does go up in elevation, but then it goes back down. So as Derek had said, one of the things when we do the assessment is to see maybe we get some more elevation shots, and is there the opportunity to sort of go through that hump to allow water to drain down that way?
Lower it a small amount to make it useful to get rid of water out of Mapleville.
Yeah, it wouldn't be easy, but
It's
something
not,
to look
and yeah,
into.
and just mind you, again, not to put this back, but when you build a basin, you still have an outfall. So where's the outfall going to go would be the canal. So
Yeah,
we'll be at the same conversation. So yes, it's things that we have on the horizon to discuss with a potential like land studies to look at potential parcels that basins could be put in to help Mapleville drain and to go along, also hold water back upstream of getting to Mapleville. So yes, that is on the horizon.
Okay, let's go back to Mapleville North and the desire to get rid of the water off of Taylorsville Road. Go back into the 14.1 acres or whatever it is, and a small basin there so that we're only draining rainwater off of the road, not out of the stream.
And as previously discussed by David, is we need PennDOT to do that.
Okay.
We would be more than willing.
But they got no money. And we got all that money sitting in the kitty from selling off the sewer system. Let us loan that to the state in writing, of course, to be paid back. We need that resolved now, not in the future when PennDOT might ever get around to it. Loan them the money that they got to pay it back. It's
Yeah,
worth a
Mr. Adams,
try.
just as a point of clarification, that money is in a trust. It's not accessible at this point to the township. So the township put that into a community trust, which again, hopefully generates long-term benefit to the community, but it's not, there's not money that's liquid, that's accessible at this point.
float a bond issue then. We got to protect these people's homes, and it can be done.
Yeah, and we're not, all of these suggestions and potential solutions, again, nobody is disputing the merit of them, that they require, but you don't just go out and do them. They require study, and there's process related to each of what you've suggested. So we're committed to work through that process. We're committed to study we're committed to the implementation of the recommendations of any study, but as you've said repeatedly, you've lived here for 72 years. These items are not new items. So we're trying to work through the process to address those properly, not in a Band-Aid fashion, but in a comprehensive fashion. And so we do understand the urgency. We do understand the frustration with process. But again, we're not trying to make excuses and point to, this agency or that agency, but there are a lot of players that need to be cooperative, working in a singular direction, which we'll continue to advocate for. But some of these items, again, are outside of the jurisdictional control of the township as a local government. So again, that's not an excuse. That's just making sure that there's an understanding of reality.
Would the township support me in trying to find out whether the Bridge Commission installed those 3 stormwater inlets with no permit whatsoever, that they just took it upon themselves to do it?
Yeah, if we can be helpful in trying to figure that out. Yeah, I don't see any issue with us trying to understand what may or may not have been done to install those facilities.
Okay, and the one culvert that you people put in, not in the curb, but in the pavement below the bridge, much closer to Taylorsville Road, if not within Taylorsville Road. What are your plans? That's the lowest one. That's the first one that the water reverse comes up through. Are you seriously studying doing away with that culvert and or pipe it over toward the Maplevale side, north along Taylorsville Road to get to your 14.1 acres, where there's plenty of acreage there for it to soak into the ground? I'm hoping that you'll tell me you're studying getting rid of yours first, the one that's at the lowest elevation, the first one to overflow on the Taylorsville Road.
And Mr. Adams, that would not be our pipe. Taylorsville Road, that inlet that you mentioned on Taylorsville Road is a state road.
You people put it there. It may be off of Taylorsville Road by this many inches, but you people, when you put in the bridge, you put it there. The state didn't put it there. The Toll Bridge Commission wasn't even here then. They didn't even have a bridge here.
But it would have been a PennDOT road, and it is under their jurisdiction. But we can certainly look into that.
Well, then you people must have gotten a permit to do it.
Yes.
But as we have found out, the bridge across the road coming down from up above, and that whole development was never studied for impervious surface. And it's part of determining that you're going to be doing the correct thing and not something that floods again. I'm saying that you people should cut a contract quickly to have that whole development surveyed for impervious surface and make that public information, just like the other developments. And of course, that brings up an interesting thing. I guess Maplevale has never been studied for impervious surface either. Not that I'm suggesting it needs to be at this time. It's those uphill that need to be, to have you folks to have good up-to-date information, so you design this for present day conditions. A lot of people have added second driveways, patios. That needs to be studied. So you calculate what you're going to do, not let it happen again. Are you going to have a impervious surface study of the Island Drive, Upton? Are you planning on doing that? I'm asking for a question, yes or no?
Well, I think
Or are we
that's-
just going to guess?
Well, I think you're asking for a million different studies all at the same time.
What's necessary is necessary.
Well, I think that's why there's an order.
There's an order. So the first study is land studies to determine what's going on. Then whatever they determine, maybe the next thing is let's go and do X, Y, and Z. And they may say X, Y, and Z is not necessary. They may say an impervious study is not necessary because they have something else going on. You don't want to run with everything at one time. You need to take the necessary steps to do it properly.
Other man is.
If I can just add, so I think when the first study is done, so for any improvement, as in, so for instance, our office, when we're designing any of these projects or anything involving stormwater or hydraulics or hydrology, we do look at the impervious surface. So the agencies will require that the H&H hydraulics and hydrology report show the impervious surface. We'll look at typically you'll look at the drainage area, the impervious surface, look at the flow and run calculations. So any improvements should have those studies.
Makefield Chase. I've already put the paperwork in for that study, but that's obviously many years ago, and people have widened their driveways, put patios in, and all of the information that you have is outdated. And if we don't have good quality information up to date, and you do whatever you do, are we going to be in a good situation, or are we going to be in a bad situation down the road when we have these terrible storms?
So for our office, any design that we're part of, we'll look at the most current available information, whether it's aerial photography, ground survey, depending on the extensiveness of the study. So that's typically what's done. We don't rely on old information. We look at current conditions and take a quantity of the type of surfaces, whether it's impervious, woods, lawn. They all have different runoff coefficients, so there's more or less stormwater coming from those surfaces. So that should be part of any study to do with design.
Well, the Hillwood Terrace evidently has never been done. So
Jim, just for clarity, just because again, not to dismiss any of this or discount any of what Mr. Adams is saying, but I do want to make sure that folks understand that we're talking about developments that occurred decades and decades and decades and decades ago. And so when there's, language like "you people," I do want to make sure that there's an understanding that this doesn't relate to current activity. The lack of study is a reflection of the requirements that were in place, in some cases that were statutorily enabled. So some of this even predates state statute governing these activities. Again, not to suggest that what Mr. Adams is saying is not important to understand, but I do want to make sure that this isn't, for those that don't necessarily understand the age of the developments that are being referenced, that there's some notion that these are new activities and there's been a lack of study done within the past decade, because we're not talking about the last decade, we're talking about decades and decades and decades ago. So I don't know if you have any comment on that. Just again, I just want to make it's not intended to discount what's being said. I just do want to make sure that people understand, because it's almost being presented as if this is current activity, that there was neglect on the part of the township from a requirement standpoint to require these things.
Yeah, the Hillwood Terrace development was developed in the 1950s and early 1960s. So that predated almost every stormwater management requirement that there was. Pennsylvania passed the Stormwater Management Act, I think in 1978, something like that. And after that, all developments were required to have detention basins to manage stormwater. That's why you have a detention basin in Makefield Chase. You have them in the estates of Prospect Manor,
But that
Longshore
that
Estate.
wasn't
But
adequate.
every
for this
development that was done
occurrence.
prior to that did not have detention basins. They just collected the water, conveyed it through the pipe system, and discharged it into the creek.
What went on in the past needs to be corrected. So what happened on the 15th of July, hopefully could never happen again. To put excuses out there that it.
I wouldn't
wasn't
say it's an
done back then.
excuse.
It needs.
We need to
be
do an
done
assessment.
now.
We need to do an upstream conditions assessment. Just to say, well, let's study this, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's something that you need to do a comprehensive look at everything. And then from there,
Let's get.
it may be that we study this and go further, but it's one step at a time, as Mr. Fuller had mentioned.
I'd just like to add
Weeks
that
gone by and no contract has been let to an outside outfit to study the water situation, so that when we get to the point of wanting to do some corrections with changing culverts or whatever we're going to have to do, we're ready. 6 weeks have gone by. Please. Let's get the Wood Terrace. This, bear in mind, this whole problem didn't arise, didn't rear its ugly head until Prospect Farms. What was done there? It appears that that additional water from there showed the fact that, hey, yeah, we're getting a lot off of Hillwood Terrace and Makefield Chase. The whole thing needs to be studied and quickly before the hurricanes. I admit you're not going to make it before the hurricanes come north, but we need to get started. 6 weeks has gone by and you have not put out whatever you do to get outside outfits to bid on the package that you put together. Please, let's get started. This occurrence of it overspilling on the Taylorsville Road, it's not the first occurrence. I believe it's the fourth, but if it's only the third, sorry, I didn't write down the dates. There are things that can be done before the ground freezes if we get busy. Now today, yeah, you were out there in the creek and you cut off the trees at just above water level. Are you coming back with I guess, a backhoe, and right there where the water is about to go under the bridge at Taylorsville Road, are you going to take out the roots that are blocking the water from going underneath the bridge? Or is that as far as we're going to go? We're just going to cut off these trees down near water level?
As previously mentioned, we're removing all the vegetation that is prohibiting flow. In order to remove any gravel, sediment, silt, soils, that is included. If it requires mechanical movement of material, it requires a permit.
Do you have a permit to get rid of those tree trunks right there where takes the curve and the bend to go under Taylorsville Road?
No.
Have you submitted them?
As
We-
just discussed, go ahead.
Yeah, we've already discussed this item.
I didn't hear his answer.
Well, Mr. Adams, we've discussed this a number of times. Do you have any other information or questions?
6 weeks have gone by and you haven't even created a piece of paper
So
to
just,
get the permit to do the job properly.
so my office is working on that. So there's several steps. First is basic research of the area. Then we gather data. Then we have to complete and compile a plan, submit an application. So it's a process and we have internal tasks to complete. So unfortunately, with the permits that are required and the agencies, that's correct. There's a lot of hoops for us to jump through, so we want to make sure we get it right. and get it approved on the first submission.
Are there any other questions from the audience?
Zeki, 18 Maple Vale. So you mentioned you're working with a consultant who's going to look at the watershed. Who is this? Can you give us the name?
Well, the contract is not, I mean, there's no signed, again, Mrs. Lezecki, that the Board of Supervisors is anticipated to look at the agreement on the 6th. We've been talking to a firm called Land Studies. Derek referenced them a couple of times out of the Lidditz area. Again, that has done this kind of work that throughout not only the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but other areas of the country.
To Mr. Adams' point, there is a level of frustration because, as he mentioned, and as you all know, we're 6 weeks since the flood, and we don't feel any safer than, or even as safe as we did. It was a false sense of security on July 14th, the day before the flood. We don't feel any safer. We know that you tried getting us the second pipe. That was not going to be the answer. It would have been a slight remedy. We don't feel any safer. We don't feel that you understand the urgency. You tell us you do, but you could look at my face and you could look at all these faces in the audience. We are scared. We are scared every time it rains. We cannot stress this enough. So it's easy to say, I'll do that paperwork tomorrow. I can do a letter another day. We don't have that time. We have hurricanes coming in September. You don't understand how it is to live that way. There's got to be more to be done. Get more people working on it. We need you to work with us. And I know, Derek, you really have been coming out. You answer the call. We need more. We need more because we're desperate. We can't live this way. And we have to implore on you and stress to you, you need to do more for us, because what's been done in the beginning, we had township people going back and forth. Now we see no one. Derek comes out. We see no one else. So that's leading me to believe that we are going to be soon to be the forgotten neighborhood like we were 2 years ago when Mr. Majewski, you came out. We were forgotten then, and I don't want that to happen again to us. I can't make that point any clearer. We need your help, and we cannot delay on anything. I realize September 6th is going to be a pivotal time. But between now and then, there are certain steps that you guys can take for us, and we need you to do it.
So
And
I'd just like to note that our office, we're the Township Engineer, Remington and Vernick. We are literally working around the clock as fast as we can to get everything on our side done. I completely empathize with you, and believe me, we're not going to forget you. We have everything laid out for us, what's to be done, and I have multiple teams working on each of these projects, and we are going as fast as possible and literally working around the clock, including myself.
we need you to do that.
Sure. And we're happy to do that,
Okay.
honestly.
Interesting point. When Mr. Adams was speaking, you said that there's a certain protocol that has to be followed. When you put in those drains on the north side of Maple Vale, I mean, we all know that those were not going to work, but no one consulted us. We're not engineers. We have certain engineers who reside in our neighborhood, but that didn't work. Why wouldn't you discuss it or even ask us, where does the water come in? Not once have you been asked.
And I'm sorry, I wasn't privy to.
The drains the new drains, the only two new that were put on the north side of Maple Vale, they're ineffective and they're a waste of time.
You mean the south side?
Oh, sorry.
Towards
Excuse
Yardley?
me. Yeah,
Okay.
outside. That's right. So the question is, you say that there's protocol, there's steps that need to be taken, but were those steps taken when those two were put in? Because if you had done any surveys when the water came through, you would see that they would not be working. They would not work. It was a waste of time. It tore up our street for nothing.
So unfortunately, I don't personally have that information right now, but I'd be happy to give you my card, has my information, and I'll be looking to members of my office and I will get you an answer. So I just personally don't have that information. I wasn't involved in those projects.
I just have one other comment about Mr. Majewski. You had mentioned that certain developments were built at different times. I would think it would still be under your jurisdiction, no matter when these developments were built, that if there's a problem with water, you have to go revisit what's been done to protect the residences that are affected.
And that is one of the reasons why we want to do a comprehensive study to look at, can we possibly correct some past mistakes? Are there anything that can be done, or other things that can be done upstream to maybe compensate for those older developments that don't have detention basins that hold back the water? And there's a whole, we've compiled information on everything upstream of Maple Vale that we have in our records. And we've reached out to outside consultants and agencies who have done plans to maybe supplement some of the stuff we don't have in our records, so that we could have a comprehensive package of stuff for the consultant to look at, so they could understand everything that's been done in the past in that whole area.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Majewski. So, and just speaking of those inlets on the south side, and I know Paul will get you more information. So the amount of information that I determined just verbally. So the intent of them was, again, there was no drainage on Taylorsville Road. It was, there's an opportunity to be able to drain minorly. We can get to the Jennings parcel. So again, with the two phases, that was phase one. Phase two was Highland Drive. So the intent was, we have an opportunity to put drains here. It's our property. It's our road. We have somewhere to drain it. Let's do that and see if we can grab some runoff that's coming off Taylorsville Road. So again, that was the intent of putting them there. We couldn't put them any further in Maple Vale. That was where grades work. That's why they dropped them there, to stop some of the flow off Taylorsville Road on the Maple Vale South. Yeah, just again, that was the kind of intent that I got verbally when I asked, why'd we pick there? It was kind of stop as much as you can on the South Drive. North Drive, again, maybe there could be a basin put in or something. North Drive, we could try to stop it from coming down Highland on the next phase. So just that's as much as I knew. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Any other comments online?
There's no comments online.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Adams.
Verbally, I've been told that there are some drains come across Dolington Road into the Foyo estate.
That is correct. A portion of Pine Brook Farms, which is maybe about a half mile up Dolington Road from Taylorsville, flows into the Fiore property underneath Dolington Road. And as I said before, that's why we're compiling all the information to really delineate where all of the water comes from.
And the township gave approval to that, and evidently Mr. Foyo went along with it, I guess.
Well, like I said, that was an old development, another one from the 1950s.
No,
Dolington Road
that's
is a
later.
PennDOT
This is in the woods you're talking about now. You're not talking the Rab farm, you're talking in the woods. You said up Dolington Road further, across
North
from Makefield Chase.
North of the Rab farm, also known as Wilshire Glen. There's the older development. I forget the names of all the roads.
Yeah.
Houston Drive, that development there.
Yeah.
There's a small portion of that does drain underneath Dolington Road and into the Fiore property, which I've actually been out there and taken a look at that. So that's just another area, and that's why we really need to do an assessment of everything going upstream.
That should have never happened. That should have gone to the south and ended up in the stream that ends up in the lake in downtown Yardley.
But once again, back in the old days, and even in the new days, typically where you have a drainage divide, water flows to the right and to the left, or to the south and to the north, they pretty much follow that. So it's basically the water that flowed in that direction continue to flow, and the rest of the development, which is almost all of it, flows to the south that goes down to Buck Creek.
Yeah.
But there is a small portion, a few acres, that does flow underneath Dolington Road through the Fiore property and out to that unnamed tributary that flows past Mapleville.
How soon can we get the steady people out there and get steadying the flows? Why in 6 weeks we haven't let a contract when we full well knew that the Hillwood Estates has never been studied, and the Prospect Farms, until they did their quickie job that is not adequate, we never had water out on the Taylorsville Road. Never. It's only since Prospects Farms added water to the stream that it has overflowed on the Taylorsville Road 3 or 4 times. And of course, this last one was the worst time by far. It never came down Taylorsville Road as far as Mapleville Drive South entrance. It always would go between the Yenchek property and the corner property. You can see that it would come that far and go between their properties because their backyards are quite low. This time it was of such quantity that it did come down all the way to Mapleville South entrance. Never happened before, never.
Prospect Farms is that first development on the north side of Dolington Road. Yeah. And we did look at the stormwater management plan for that. The plans show and the report shows that the amount of water after development was significantly reduced as part of the development.
I don't
And
believe
I believe we
that.
have a picture from one of the neighbors who lives behind that it showed the detention basin full, but it did not overtop the spillway as some of the other basins upstream did. So it basically held back the water from that development. Although actually I heard from different people that this has been a flooding problem since back in the 1970s. So. Yeah, but that whole stream has been a problem since probably even before anything was developed.
I disagree because I've lived there. You're making a statement that you cannot substantiate. The Prospect Farms people got so many variances from those 5 people that sit up here. It was unbelievable.
There have been no variances in Prospect Farm.
Sir, I sat at these meetings and I witnessed and heard the variances that the 5 elected people gave that developer. I was here. If you weren't here, then don't say what you think. Facts. I only want to hear facts.
Is there anything else from the public? Okay, just to wrap up, I'd just like to remind people, if you do have any damages or know anyone who's had any flood damages, if you could have them report that to the township, they could call the township number 267-274-1100, or they could email in their information to admin@lmt.org, admin@lmt.org. Anything else, Mr. Kratzer?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
Okay. I want to thank you all for coming out and listening to our update. And we'll continue to provide you information periodically so that you guys can know what's going on. And we'll be working our hardest to try to get everything moving forward in a timely fashion. April just asked when the next meeting was. I'm not sure with yeah, there may be some conflicts with that, but we'll do that. But thank you very much. Good night.
Has anyone with boots on stood in the creek